Hey guys, this is Godzilla 2010, so it's been a long time since I've done a video, but I just got back, well not recently got back, but I've seen Shin Gojira. I thought about it for a while, so here's my thoughts. So most people either really like this movie, or really hate it. I'm kind of middle ground where I really like the scenes of Godzilla, but a lot of the rest of it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of drawn out, so I'm kind of in the middle about this movie. I did really enjoy it, but it just was kind of lacking. But I won't have any spoilers in this review or anything, so if you haven't seen the film, you can watch this, you'll still enjoy it just fine. So one of my main complaints is there just wasn't any interesting human character whatsoever in this film. All this film is about is either Godzilla attacking a city, or people figuring out how to kill Godzilla. That's the whole film. There's no character development or anything like that. The characters are really forgettable, bland, they're standard politicians, and that's about it. Like, some of them have different opinions about the government, but they usually just kind of reflect different opinions that already exist in the real world. So they aren't necessarily new ideas that we haven't heard of before. So the characters don't have anything unique, to remember them by, or anything extremely relatable. So when one of them dies, you just don't care a whole lot. So it doesn't feel like there's much risk. When you see Godzilla on screen, you're not concerned that the characters are going to die. You're like, okay, here's Godzilla. This is going to be entertaining. Which is kind of disappointing, but I think I'd rather have something like this than the extremely bland. Godzilla 2014 had just as bland characters, except for Bryan Cranston. I'm not even a Breaking Bad fan. He just was the most interesting character in the whole film. And, initially with that film, I was glad they killed him off because, I didn't want, the whole thing to be honoring Breaking Bad more than Godzilla. But now that I think about it, Bryan Cranston is the most interesting character in that film. And, they tried to have character development and everything, Godzilla 2014, but it just felt flat. They relied on that so much that when it didn't work, the whole movie just kind of fell apart there, and you're just kind of waiting until the end because there isn't a whole lot else to be in for. For 2014, you watch the beginning until Bryan Cranston dies, then you just can go to the end, and that's the whole entertaining part of the film. But with Shin Gojira, at least they're not trying to force us, there's not interesting characters down here for you have to be interested in these characters. No, they're not. That's not what they're relying on whatsoever. Kind of more relying on you're supposed to be interested in figuring out how to be Godzilla and being entertained by Godzilla destroying the city, which is definitely an interesting idea. You just have it focused on Godzilla the whole time, and there hasn't been really anything like that. It's just always been some other side plot that's taken up a fair amount of time or something. There's always been something else other than just focusing on Godzilla. There was the side plot, but it wasn't really focused on all that much. It was just kind of maybe 5 minutes at most. It's battling up more politicians trying to achieve goals in their careers, and that was really it. It didn't add character development. There just needed to be more to that, the characters. But that was the only major complaint. Everything else is kind of minor, but doesn't really bring down the film all that much. Everything else I'm okay with, but doesn't mean that's the only problem. There is some other problems, but I'm not. Here's the thing: I'm not gonna complain about the effects because I know Japan is a little bit behind the US in CGI. There were a lot of great effects, and I said, "Wow, that looks really amazing." There was a lot of those moments in this film. Some of them didn't look all that great. Yeah, there was some parts that looked kind of but there were some parts that I thought were really good, even better than Godzilla 2014, which was overall a very good looking film, special effects wise. But yeah, so let's see, what can I talk about that isn't spoilers? There's a lot. This is a very complex film. If you're not good at reading fast subtitles, then you're gonna have trouble following the plot. Because this is a very complex and in-depth story. This story made me think, which is, I'm really glad that happened. There aren't a whole lot of Godzilla films that make you think. It actually made you, you actually had to use your mind when watching this. which I think was definitely a really good idea. It does make it more investing, like, because you don't have characters, so how can you keep someone interested? It's not like, you know, where you have to think, like, you know, create fan theories or anything. You have to think to understand, but it's not like you need, you know, you need to be really smart to understand it. It just takes a little bit, you know, brain power and understanding. So it's enough where it's keeping me invested, but wasn't too much where I just couldn't understand it at all. But yeah, I think definitely if there's gonna be a sequel, it should rely a little bit more on character, and that's probably the biggest thing with it. So I need to probably talk about something else other than just, you know, the character. It's like there needs to be more of that and actually done well. But yeah, I don't have any problems with Godzilla design or any of it, you know, or anything about Godzilla. Godzilla is well done, and that's fine. Every minute Godzilla I like I can't say much about that because that's spoilers. This is definitely a very plot, you know, dependent film. Like, in the sense of there's a lot of spoilers, but not a very character dependent film, which is kind of odd. But there is a lot of things in this film that are unique and give it its own identity. But it also does kind of use nostalgia to bring you in and make you feel more comfortable. It has a lot of things that do give it its own identity. Or I can say, yeah, that's Shin Gojira. It gives it its own identity, it feels like its own film. But here's one of the greatest things about this film. It finally separates itself from the main timeline. It's a complete reboot, nothing connected to 1954, it's its own film. And finally, the timeline was so terrible. And I really don't like the Godzilla timeline, I think it's just a complete mess. And you could have easily connected a lot more films instead of just constantly rebooting. I feel like they totally just didn't have any idea what they were doing with the timeline. And they probably didn't care, which would explain a lot. But it's just a complete reboot, not related to 1954. Which I'm so glad about. That's a refresher. Just be able to watch a film independently, not have to think about 1954. Despite that being a great film, I'm watching a film for the film, not another one that was a precursor. And even 2014 kind of, you know, fails at that. Because then again, it just goes a little bit, you know, earlier in 1954 timeline. Just a little bit before. Like, 2014's, I think, timeline starts, I like to say it starts at the same time where 1954's timeline starts. It just has different events. It's like an alternate timeline to 1954 instead of the original Godzilla being created. 2014, it's kind of put, well, he was awakened, but then it's put in the it's kind of dormant again, then wakes up. So that's, I feel like 2014 is still connected in some way. It's just, it's an alternate timeline to the original 54. This one isn't at all. This timeline starts off in a completely different time. Which I'm glad, you know, Godzilla has a different origin, but he's still created by radiation. We all kind of knew that was coming. So, you know, his origin is close enough to the original, but I'm fine with it. Even 2014's, I think, was okay. As long as it has something to do with radiation, you know, that's, you know, it just needs to have that to do with him. You know, I think that's one of the most important parts about. So, yeah, let's see, the soundtrack. The soundtrack was amazing for this film. It had some of the original scores, which were really nice to hear, but I don't know, I feel like this movie, like, I do like hearing the original sound effects and, you know, scores and everything, but this, you know, this movie just feels different. It's too different to have those, you know, familiar things in them, and for them to seem natural. Like, every time, you know, something from the original sound effect, you know, a sound effect from the original or music from the original played, it just felt odd because this film is so different, but, you know, it's still Godzilla. It's not too different, but it's so different. In fact, when you hear something that familiar, it just feels odd. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have original theme. I like that. I really do like they protect, you know, they added in the best songs from the original. And they added in, you know, the footsteps, sound effects, and everything. That was good. I really like those. But I don't think it fits in this movie. It fits in 1954. It definitely does. And it's great in that film, but this film is different. So I feel like they relied a little bit too much on 1954. When your Godzilla is so different, your story is so different, you know, you can't have that be, like, okay, Godzilla 2014 was very similar to a Showa era plot, and did not have, like, if they played 19, you know, Godzilla theme or something, if they had some of those sound effects, it would have felt fine in that film, because, you know, it felt like a Showa era film. It had that kind of plot to it. Shin Gojira doesn't have that plot, but it seems to be more related, like, to 1954 in that sense. Not, you know, story-wise, but in homage-wise, which is kind of odd. You know, if you've seen this film, you know what I'm talking about, but this film is very different from 1954. And all of a sudden, like, they're trying to connect it in a way, like, say, oh look, it's familiar, it's similar to what you saw before. And like, ever trying to, you know, appeal to, you know, people who grew up with Godzilla, and trying to appeal to that audience, but you're already appealing to that audience once you have a design that looks close enough to the original Godzilla, and you put the name on it. You already have that audience. You don't need to worry about, you know, bringing them in more. Like, you know, if you played the original theme in the opening credits, or during that scene where Godzilla's attacking, I'm fine. But they put it through the entire film. And like, you're not making a remake, you're making your own separate film that's very different. Like, don't go into this film expecting to see a lot from other films for it to be similar. It's very different, but it's close enough where you can still say, yes, it is Godzilla. It feels like Godzilla. But it's also very different, which I do enjoy about this, but yeah, I think it just seemed confused whether it wanted to be its own thing or be 1954 again. And, you know, that is kind of a hard balance to choose. I can see that being a little bit difficult, but it seemed like they're leaning a little bit more towards being their own thing, and they probably should have just gone more of that, you know, more of that route, but still being Godzilla. But, you know, like, man, I think it was okay to have them in. It's not a huge problem, it just felt sometimes a little bit odd, and they didn't, like, do, you know, they didn't, like, reorchestrate them, they kind of just rubbed them out of the original, have that same quality from the original, just made it even feel more on. If they just kind of, you know, I didn't need a remix of it, it's just the original song, just replayed, and, you know, everything's the same, just replay with higher quality to it, that would have been fine, but it's the same, you know, audio quality from 1954, which is really strange to me. Why would you go through the trouble just to have the original, you know, sound to, like, take the original audio from 1954 and put it into this film? They probably just reorchestrated it, you know, had it the same, and that would have been fine. Like, I don't know, some of the decisions in that aspect were a little bit strange, but it doesn't bring the film down whatsoever. I think it's just a personal opinion, more of a nitpicking there. But yeah, I'm not gonna say this is one of my personal favorites. I did really enjoy it. It was really good. And I'm glad they focused on Godzilla. The focus of this movie is Godzilla. I really enjoy that. That's one of my favorite aspects of it. Which 2014 was lacking. Just 2014, Godzilla was just there. In this film, you know, Godzilla is the focus. He is the entire film, which is perfect. It should be focused on him. He should be the main threat. But however, advertising 2014, it seems like they're trying to advertise this film. Like, what do you say? Now I become Death Destroyer of Worlds. That sounds like Shin Gojira. Like, that's what that seems to be what they're going for. Which is kind of funny, but yeah. Now here's the thing. You do actually see Godzilla do, like, direct killing. You don't just assume he does kill people. You see him directly killing people, like in GMK. So, anyone who's a big fan of those scenes from GMK where he goes out of his way, you see him kill people, you're going to enjoy some of those scenes in this film. Like, I'm not gonna say when he does it or how he does it, but it will happen, and you're going to enjoy that. And anyone who's a big fan of Godzilla vs. Destroyer, there's gonna be some nods where you're gonna definitely enjoy, but you know, you're gonna appreciate some of those nods to Godzilla vs. Destroyer. But here's the thing, like, okay, so definitely the highlights It's about midway through the film. I'm not gonna say what it's about, but I love how they, have the scene. It's at night, you can see Godzilla's, glowing red and everything. You can just see it. Like, special effects look best during this scene. For the whole film, this is where Godzilla looks the best the whole time. And there's not a single scene, there's not a single time during this scene where I can say he looks kind of fake, or looks a little bit off. This nighttime scene just looks amazing. And just everything, it just looks amazing to see him glowing during the night, just see that, and it illuminates him. I think that's just looks really nice. But there is a lot of daytime scenes, which I do really like, because, having it all at nighttime but hard to see him gets really annoying after a while. You can have nighttime scenes, that's fine, but you need to have some daytime where you can see his design, understand what he looks like. Because, I think 2014 Pacific Rim really failed on this. You just didn't really get to see a whole lot, in great detail. Because there's always something slightly obscuring your, vision of him, of, the kaiju, or the mech, in Pacific Rim, it's always raining, always at night. And then in Godzilla 2014, it's dust, it's done at night a lot, cuts a lot of times. But in this, there isn't cut away from Godzilla a whole lot. They do show Godzilla a fair amount, and it doesn't get old. Which was, Gareth Edwards' fear while making 2014. And I can see his fear, I understand that. But this kind of proves him wrong that it's not a big deal to show Godzilla a fair amount. It's not gonna ruin it. I still enjoyed seeing Godzilla every time he's on screen. And they did show him a fair amount, it wasn't a ton, but they did show him a lot more. They showed him, I think, enough where you could be satisfied with how much you saw him. And, I think this film was mainly to show that some of the problems that with 2014 have been easily fixed, and wouldn't, bring up new problems. I think this definitely shows that, improves that. And, I don't think it's definitely not directly attacking 2014 clearly, but you can kind of link it together and see, we did this different way and it worked out fine. Which I think is good to kind of show America, you can do these changes and it still works. I think that's really good without, directly attacking them by any means. But I think there's too much commentary. I think they were attacking the UN and the US a bit too much. Yeah, you're allowed to say that Japan wants to be, have more control over its military. That's fine, you can talk about that. That's perfectly okay, but I feel like you're attacking the US and the UN a bit too much. Or 1954, they even mentioned the US when they're talking about, the nuclear bombs and radiation affecting Godzilla. They didn't mention the US once, and they were able to get across the problem of radiation. You could have gone through and only mentioned the UN, trying to take over, or, the Godzilla situation, and you could have left it at that. That would have been fine. Japan saying we should have more control over this situation, and, that would have been fine. You don't need to be constantly poking at it saying, hey, it's their fault. Look at them. You don't need to do that. You can just say, here's this problem, we don't like it, we want to do this different. We want to do it differently. And that's what 1954 did in a sense. You can definitely assume, you can put together and see, oh, right, because, the US was, experimenting with nuclear bombs and everything, so you can kind of put the blame on them. I would never directly blame them or attack them. In this film, they don't care. They, make fun of them all they want. And just kind of make some jokes over here and there. Which I guess, you can joke around about that. That's, that's okay, but when you're doing it repeatedly, it's okay, we get it. America is kind of dumb at times, and the UN isn't any better a lot, so you could have definitely expressed that without being so direct and pointing a finger at them. You just felt it felt like more you're kind of blaming them, instead of saying, this is a problem, let's fix this. With 1954, they don't, but, they don't mention America once, which is kind of hard to do with this theme. That Japan needs to have more control over its, military and self-defense force. It's kind of hard to do without mentioning the UN or the US. but you could have done it a lot, less. I think you did it way too much. You could have cut down on that. But that's my opinion. And once again, that's kind of more of minor nitpicks. But yeah, that's all I can say without getting into spoilers. It's going to be an entertaining film. It is very entertaining. It has some problems, but overall I did like it. I definitely think it's a good film. But I would say I'm definitely more of middle of the road. I'm not going to give an official score because I think that's I kind of learned by now that scoring by numbers is a little bit corrupt at this point. But I will say I did enjoy it. I would recommend it, obviously. But, don't expect it to be amazing. I feel like a lot of, the opinions are a little bit biased to either side. Like, some people I think are hitting on it a little bit too much, and I feel like some people are loving it too much. You can have your opinion, but I didn't feel there was enough middle ground. But my stance is middle ground with this film. Definitely lean more towards I liked it. But, yeah, like, the scenes where Godzilla, it's mean Godzilla, I love those scenes. It was really good, it was really memorable, it was perfect. I just think they should have made the, scenes where you're dealing with the human characters a little bit more enjoyable and interesting. You could have had this, deep and in-depth plot and everything, you could have had the complexity. That was fine. But you just need to have some characters with it. And that was kind of the problem. But, yeah, that's what I had to say about it. So, tell me what you found about the film. I did definitely enjoy it. I don't think it deserves a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes by any means, but it definitely is pretty good. So, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys later.